Hello and welcome back to Marineford TCG. My name is Joe. Drink of the day is Tenzing, Peach and Honey Melon, and in around a week from today, next Friday in fact, EB03 Heroines will be releasing in the West. This set is going to be very in demand and provides a nice selection of buffs to a wide range of leaders, as well as introducing one brand new leader. So in this video I'm going to be talking about some of the better buffs to leaders, and also of course our first card, Red Blue Vivi. So Red Blue Vivi is the new leader out of EB03. It's a spiritual successor to the old Red Blue Vivi from OP04, and is a far, far better version of that. In addition, some of the new cards that we've gained in this very set, such as the 5-cost Vivi and the 5-cost Nami, combine perfectly together to give you an incredible defense, with, of course, the Vivi being a blocker, and the interaction between this leader's once per turn effect and blockers. Lets you just block any swing, and then for one card you can negate the KO of your blocker, giving you incredibly cheap defense. This Vivi also draws a ton of cards, both with that Nami and with some other blue effects, and plays a little bit like a removal deck that has a decent amount of aggression because you give everything rush. There are sort of two schools of thought on how to play this Vivi. There's a classic version revolving around more like cards like Koby and Cavendish, as well as Silver's Rayleigh, that you can see a list for on your screen now. There's also the heavier Alabaster version that looks to include the Vivi and the Chakra Impel from EB04 to form more of a complete Alabaster build and lean into that archetype more heavily. I'm unsure which is best just yet, but there are lists for both of them. Next up, we gained a little bit of support for our Red Uta friends. I'm not going to be talking about Mono Red Uta. I think that leader is beyond cooked. But I think Red Purple Uta is the deck that's going to actually benefit from this new 5-cost Uta more. This Uta lets you play out vanilla and draw a couple cards. Red Purple Uta does struggle with card economy because of her leader effect making her trash to ramp. So even if this didn't play out vanilla, just having the ability to draw 2 actually might be valuable enough. A 5/7 that draws 2 is pretty strong. But being able to cheat out vanillas is a pretty cool side effect. You can play some vanilla 2Ks in the deck, then you're not really losing anything in terms of deck building efficiency. For example, you can play the Ein from EB03 as a nice film searchable target for this Uta. And then what this deck really wants to do is go towards big shanks. That's how the deck's kind of played in the past. I don't think Red Purple Uta is going to be too crazy, but here's a list if you wanted to give it a try. She's also gained a couple of other cards. There's this blocker Karina, which I genuinely think is dreadful. I don't see the use case for this card. And there is also the 4-cost blocker Baccarat, who's a little bit better, but I think I want to use this Uta as a stepping stone to sort of help you get to your top end whilst not running out of cards and developing some on-board threats. Next up, we got some buffs for Sugar. So the 3-cost Sugar lets you, on your going first curve, on 3, then play out a Don Quixote Pirates character with 6,000 power or less. So this is huge for Sugar because that threshold of 6,000 power is exactly what you need to turn your leader effect on to then restand on at the end of your turn. And then you can use an event in your opponent's turn to ramp up. This does go fairly neg in hand, it must be said. But out of OP14, we have a whole bunch of new Don Quixote Pirates targets. For example, I think the Monet is going to be one of the better ones. Because that's going to ramp you once, and then with your Sugar's leader effect combined with Sugar's effect, you can ramp again, which could be pretty funky. And then you'll end up on 7 Don on your 3rd turn, which is kind of crazy. It's a shame it's not 8, because then you could go straight into 8-cost Dofi, but on evens you could certainly do that curve, which is pretty cool. The one thing that concerns me a little bit about this card in particular is that you're going very minus in hand, right? You're going very, very minus in hand, unless you play out the Rosie, 5-cost Rosie, who's a good target. But the fact that once this is on the board, it doesn't really do anything does scare me a little bit. And if you don't see this early, it's also really dead late game. So I'm not sure how much this is going to push the needle for Sugar, but it's a pretty cool card. And we did gain one other new card for Sugar. We gained this new 5-cost Monet. She is a blocker and on play lets you look for a character with 1,000 power or less. So realistically that finds like the Sugar we just talked about, Sugar Searcher. I believe there's a Viola 2k. There's some kind of Don Quixote Pirates 2k that has 1,000 power. So you can include that. Or it can grab an event. So with the Sugar deck being quite heavily focused around events, this isn't going to whiff. and being able to play out a blocker and get a search is also another nice target for that 3-cost sugar. I don't see this being played in any other deck, personally, but I think this is probably an inclusion of at least a couple copies in sugar. If you did want to try sugar, this list is untested by me, I'm afraid, but here is a sugar list that you could try out with these couple of new cards. Now, my boy Koby got some buffs. Firstly, this 3-cost Hibari is just incredible for the deck. Gives herself the ability to attack active characters, then attacks an active character, and then gives something else the ability to attack active characters. Also, just gives minus 1,000 power every single turn. No reason. This is an excellent card for the deck. Really makes your board clear so much easier. And this gets even better in EB04 when this can be summoned back with the 3-cost Helmeppo 2k. The other card we've gained for Koby is the 4-cost Kujaku. This provides massive defense for your board, as well as a really nice big body and a bit of draw, which is always appreciated in Koby. Between this Hibari and the Kujaku, I don't think Koby is going to be anywhere near top tier until EB04 and we get those extra couple of black cards. But I think it gives him at least a lot more playability. And if you did want to play some Koby, there's a list on your screen about now. Next up, Carrot's support has finally all coalesced. I'm very excited to try Carrot with this new 6-cost Carrot. I tried her in EB04 OP14 format with just the new Eleclaw and the Mistoms. It didn't feel great, I'm not going to lie. It felt really, really inconsistent and just not as powerful as some of the other mono green decks like Mihawk and Bonney. So now that we have removal and a way to play out that Zoe if you do miss it early, I'm quite excited to finally make a Carrot video. I think now is the time. She will be coming soon. Unless this deck is truly as atrocious as it was in EB04. But surely between these, the 8-cost Carrot, it's got to be good, right? I mean, with the Eleclaw being able to reduce the cost of things and then being able to KO it with this Carrot, it's got to be good. Got to be good. Here's a list of Carrot that I'm probably going to start with when I try testing Carrots. Red-Green Oden also gained a small amount of support. We have this Otama as an alternate 2k. I don't think this one's too crazy, but it's okay. And we've also gained the 1-cost Hiyori. The 1-cost Hiyori essentially makes your deck 46 cards, because for 1 Don you can draw 1, and then you get the Don back with her activate name. And it also provides just the Don on certain turns when you wouldn't have been able to put it on your leader otherwise. For example, on your 4 Don turn, if you want to use the Hiyori combo to play out Denjiro, then you already have this 1-cost Hiyori on the board where you can do that. That's brilliant. Also on 5 Don, if you want to do that exact same thing, you can also play You Can Be the Samurai to rest down your 1-cost Hiyori and your 4-cost Hiyori. Use the 1-cost Hiyori to put the Don on the leader, use the 4-cost Hiyori to summon Denjiro or Izo, and then you can swing with your leader and increase his power for the turn, which is pretty cool. Not a game changer, I don't think, but a nice little buff for Oden, and we'll look to make him a little bit more consistent. Here is a list of RG Oden that I'll probably be starting with when I do start testing Oden. The other deck that I think gets most use out of this Otama is Green-Yellow Yamato. I think this is also Giga optional in GY Yamato. There are so many good Land of 102Ks within those colours, but I'm not sure this makes the cut. However, I did play it in my Yamato build that I was playing in my Yamato video just this week. So list on your screen if you want to check that out, and also a link in a card on your screen. Check out that gameplay. But Yamato also gains the new 5-cost Yellow Yamato, and this is the game changer for Yamato. It's not going to rocket Yamato to tier 1, absolutely not, but it is really, really nice. Being able to put 3 on your leader, being a body that your opponent doesn't really want to KO, at least by battle or KO effects, and obviously playable off that Hiyori to give you an insane 4-Don turn. I think between the 5-Don Yamato and maybe this Otama, Yamato has a lot more promise as we look into EB03. I don't have a list for you for this Kuina, but small nod that this is actually quite cool in Zonji, because you can play this and then activate main and then pick her up. So it's a free way to activate your leader effect and restand something. I don't think this is too crazy. I think Zonji's got a few issues at the minute. The Ace matchup is still pretty tricky because they become very large. And also the Mihawk matchup with him being a 6k leader is just inherently a bit more difficult. This Kami I don't think is very good, but there's a cool interaction with the Jinbe leader where you can put a Don on your leader and then use Jinbe's effect to restand this Kami. I don't think this is ever worth including, but I think that's what they were going for. Now let's move on to Green Bonney. So there is this new 5/6 Bonney. I'm not very impressed by this. Of course, you can play this in more than just Green Bonney. You could also use this in GY Lore. But both of these decks have so many good Supernova 5-cost targets. And 5 costs in general. In Green Bonney, I think this compares pretty poorly to Cavendish, of course. Pretty poorly to Carrot. And also, I think pretty poorly to both the old 5-cost Bonney that can stun a character or a Don. And also the Secret Bonney. There are so many good green Supernova 5-costs. I just don't see this card seeing play. One that I have a little bit more hope for is the Uta. I think it's pretty cool. Gives Bonney something to do on 7 that isn't just Jammer Hody. 7 was kind of an awkward turn for the deck. Of course, it's unsearchable, but if you're a Bonney enthusiast, you're used to all your cards being unsearchable. That's part of Bonney's appeal, I think. But yeah, being able to rest a Don or a 4-cost every single turn and get a free Don back. And you can even just restand this Uta at the end of your turn if you think she might get targeted down. Seems quite interesting, and I'm excited to try a list a little bit like this one when I try Green Bonney with the new Uta. And the new Uta is, of course, playable in Green Uta as well. I think Green Uta is still going to have some issues, but the addition of a 1-cost event to make use of the free Dons you might get from something like 5-cost Sanji, and also this 7-cost Uta being able to restand various units and interact with the opponent's board in interesting ways, I think is quite cool for the deck. She's still going to be, I think, a rogue deck, but this is a list that I'm going to be trying when I do start playing Green Uta. I'm not talking about most of the cards that I don't see a home for, but this Tashigi is an SR with an alt art and an SP, and I just think this card's kind of shit. I think they're going for RG Smoker, and you've got the funny 7k restanding blocker, because she gets the extra 1000 power from Red Green Smoker's leader effect. But this is so expensive, right? Having to rest a Don and trash a card to restand, I just don't think it's worth it. Like, you might get that card back with a free block, but if you don't, you kind of just trashed a card. And she's only removal to KO by effect. She's not immune to bouncing with a Jozu, or being trashed by Ben Beckman, or things like that. So I really just think this card's kind of bad. If you have a home for this that I'm not thinking of, let me know. I've not seen much success from this card, which is quite disappointing. Moving on to blue, and there's a couple of other of these later. These like weird understated characters that KO weenies, like this Alvida. I don't really see a great home for her. I mean, if you want to put this in your buggy deck, go ahead. But if you are a deck that's struggling into weenie spam deck, like Rayleigh, I guess, cards like this and the Baby 5 that we'll talk about later, or I guess we'll just put it on the screen now, could be okay, I guess. I don't really see a natural home for these cards, though. The card I do see a natural home for is Iska. Iska is a Sakazuki card. 100%. This is an absolute game changer for Sakazuki. I've already played some Sakazuki on the channel with this card. If you want to hear me talk about Iska and why this card is so good in Sakazuki, check out my Sakazuki video where I played some games with the deck list on your screen now. Another deck where Iska could be okay is in blue Kuzan, but Kuzan is kind of getting this aggregation of really, really good cards in the 4 to 6 range. Of course, you have the old classics, the Borsalino and the Sengoku, which are really, really nice on 4. But now you also have the Bluegrass on 4, you have the Iska on 6, and then on 5 you have both the Isho and the Hina. The Hina, I don't know, I don't think I really like this one. It's the fact that it only hits exactly 6,000 base power is going to be really good in some situations. When your opponent plays a Marco and you just go, get rid of that Marco. That's great. But if your opponent plays a 5,000 power character on their forward on turn, well, it doesn't work. So including this Hina in your deck is going to be really a meta call. And as such, I'm not going to have a list where it is staple. The Iska, again, I think the Isho is so powerful when you get his effect. But I think it's just outclassed both these cards in Kuzan. But they are both still valid options. If you really want to remove some 4s or some 6,000 base power characters, you could look to include this Hina and the Iska. A deck that I do have a list for is Blue Nami. Blue Nami's getting 2 cards. Firstly, you! Soldier boy, tell him. Anyway, you lets you actually cycle through your deck, because Nami has just been languishing ever since the ban of the real leader. And then this Kaira is an OK 2K. I've already got a Nami video on my channel. If you want to see some gameplay with these new cards, of me playing the deck with the list on your screen now. Ah, yes, there's a few Boa, Hancock, Amazon Lily type cards in this set. I think they're all kind of bad. The new 6/8 Boa is interesting, forcing your opponent to trash a card and then being able to give a bunch of dons. But within the Boa Hancock deck, the blue-yellow Boa Hancock, I don't know, man. It doesn't seem that good. When you compare it to, like, Gorgon Sisters, that gives everything a don for no cost, or even just Ran that gives your leader the don, and the other 6 cost that you can play in the deck, like Kuma, like Rayleigh, like the new 5-cost Nami from this set that we will talk about later, I think this is just kind of outclassed, and in Blue Boa, this doesn't remove. Like, it can draw you some cards, give you some dons, and then snipe a card, which all of those effects are good, but this just doesn't seem like a card that's doing one thing and doing it really well, which most cards that end up in decks are quite specialized, but just very powerful. This card seems to be a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, so I'm not very excited about this card. Nor am I very excited about this Marguerite that hits exactly 7,000 base power. This is just worse than the Hina. I don't really know what they're thinking about with this one. This card genuinely just seems terrible. And also the event is absolutely rancid. This is terrible. Paying an extra card to cheat out a 6-cost Boa 1 turn early, even 1 Don early, is so bad. And the counter effect of this card is not good either. Like 3,000 for one of your Boa Hancock. Come on, man. What are we doing here? Now, here's a real man's card. This 5-cost Reiju is an absolute game changer for Sanji. Sanji was already doing really quite well in the OP14 EB04 format with some of the new cards that he gained from EB04. But this Reiju, giving you effectively unlimited access to both Red Rock and Raging Tiger as soon as you see one and put it in the trash, is so insane for this deck. The fact that you can then bounce this card with Slave Arrow to just reuse it and keep spamming Red Rock or spamming Raging Tiger is genuinely very, very frustrating to play into. And I think this is possibly one of the best cards in the set. I think this makes Sanji into potentially tier 1 threat in this format. I think Emu is still going to be a somewhat difficult matchup, but into Ace you can just spam unlimited Red Rocks. Into any going wide yellow deck, you can spam unlimited Raging Tigers. Sanji kind of has everything now, and that's a little bit scary, but this Reiju is absolutely no joke and one of the best cards in the set. If you do want to start playing Sanji, here's a list on your screen. This is not going to be a perfect list, I can assure you of that. Sanji is going to be one of the most difficult decks to build, but here's a starting point. Very minor buff for Purple Katakuri. If you want effectively extra copies of Perospero, you can play this Brule. I think she is worse than Perospero in every way. Worse stat line, has 1k, but doesn't get you cycle. But if you really want to play Katakuri, it's probably worth including 1 or 2 copies of this alongside your Perosperos. Now, this new Linlin has kind of divided the blue-purple Luffy players. There's a lot of lists that don't run this at all, and then there's a lot of lists that run this at 4. What this does is give you a really, really smooth going second curve. On 4 Don, you want to do 1 ramp. Be that a Bonclay, be that a Zorojuro, be that an It's to Die For, you want to do 1 ramp. And it is slightly annoying there's only rocks and not Big Mum, because then you could have maybe looked to try and search this with a Big Mum Pirate Searcher, because that also searches It's to Die For, and a couple other cards in the deck like Pudding. But nevertheless, this lets you draw 1 and put 1 back on top of your deck, as well as a ramp. That gets you to 8, and lets you put a boss monster on top of your deck, so as long as you have Sanji in your hand, you have the guaranteed Sanji combo on your first 10 Don turn, which is so big. In addition, on KO, this heals, and healing in UP Luffy, if you played during his heyday, you know how dangerous that is. So your opponent is really not going to want to KO this Linlin. They may well Red Rocket, they may well get rid of it with 9-cost Mihawk, but they're not going to KO this. Which means that UP Luffy now has a sticky body, which is kind of nuts. I don't know which build of the UP Luffy is going to be better. I haven't tested this one just yet. But if you do want to try a Linlin-based build, there's one on your screen now. This new Pudding 2k is interesting. I don't think it really goes in any of the Big Mum Pirates decks, because like ramping 1 back from behind and then being a blocker, I think for me, the best home for this is in Foxy, because you can play it off of Porsche. It ramps you back, and develops you a nice little blocker, as well as a decently statted card. Like 4K is not terrible. So as a 2K in the Foxy deck, I think this could be quite interesting. Outside of this, I think most decks probably won't need a card like this. But if you are a Big Mom Pirates purple deck, a 2K that is just a blocker is probably better than some of the vanilla options that you sometimes see. Limb gained a buff, gained a new limb. It's a shame this isn't searchable off your 3-cost limb, and I already have a video on the channel with some gameplay with limb. If you want to see how much this impacts the deck, and I think it's decently impactful, gives you some nice plays on 7 particularly, as well as later in the game just to make you a little bit harder to kill. This is the list I was playing in the video, and the video is on your screen in a little card. Getting a little bit of support for Purple Black King. I don't think any of it is very impactful. There's a Black Moria that can do a little bit of searching for the Onigashima and then play it out as well as be a blocker, which that card's not too bad, honestly. And then there's also this ulti, which is terrible. It plays out of vanilla. It plays out of vanilla from your trash, so you get a bit of board spam, but like, comparing this to the King from EB04, like, bro, I'm not doing this. I'm just not doing this, man. I'm playing King every time. I'm going to high roll. Purple Black King has even more search, so if you're not seeing your 6-cost King in this deck, just hang up the hat. Oh man, this ulti is shit. We gained a little bit of new Cypher Pole support. This new Stussy is interesting. I think this is pretty decent in the Lucci builds with EB04 that I was playing before. If you do want to see some EB04 Lucci, I guess there's a video on my channel for that. But in base Lucci, currently, Lucci's like pretty unplayable at the minute because you cannot beat Emu. But if you did want to play it, you could try this over Jack. I feel like Jack might still just be better. He gives you cycle, he's a better body, he's really hard to remove. This Stussy is a blocker, which is nice, but Jack gets value turn over turn. I think this is worse Jack, but if you do want to see me try this out in EB04 Lucci, check out the Lucci video on my channel. Now, one of the most exciting black cards is this Koala. This is a major buff for both Koala and also Red Black Sabo. Both of those decks really like this character's on KO, letting you play out realistically the 6-cost Robin in Koala and the 6-cost Sabo in Sabo. Means that this card is basically unremovable by KO. Your opponent can still trash it with Ben Beckman. They can still Red Rocket, but that's pretty expensive. But yeah, this card gives you some nice board presence in both of those decks. I think this also outclasses all of the other 4-costs, except maybe the Sabo promo in specifically Sabo. But like in Koala, this is better than Hack. This is better than Morley. This is better than Lindbergh. And in Sabo, I think this comes in quite nicely alongside that McDonald's Sabo promo to give you a more reliable 4-don, 6-don, 8-don curve. If you did want to try a list of either of those decks, there's a Koala list on your screen now, and the Sabo list playing this Koala on your screen now. Now, we did gain a couple of new Thriller Bark support cards. This 4-cost blocker Perona, it can play a 2 sometimes. It always gives you leader at Don though, which is quite nice. Bit of extra aggression. I think this was designed for Black Moria, but I think Black Moria honestly is beyond saving. That deck is so weak at this point because his KO strategy doesn't work, and Black Yellow Moria does his spam strategy far better. I think this will be a decent card in Black Yellow Moria. I don't know if this would ever be a 2-of, because you can't summon it with Hogbacks on KO, which is slightly annoying, but you can summon it with all the triggers that play 4-cost Thriller Bark characters from your trash, like the Hogbacks trigger. As for what 2-costs you're playing, Sindri, that's about it. You could try, was he Inupe, I guess, but yeah, I think if you want to try this in Black Yellow Moria, there's a list on your screen now. And we'll move on to Perona, I suppose, with the new Perona event. I actually don't think this really helps Perona very much. It'll give her a bunch of board spam. But the fact this doesn't actually work with how Perona's removal is set up is so disappointing. Because you play out a 6 and a 4, right? So say you play out the 6-cost Moria and you play out a 4-cost Perona, the 2k, for a bit of reduction. Well, then the Moria looks to play out a Ryuma, but because you can't use your leader effect halfway through this event, the character's not rested, so you can't like reduce something and then rest it and then KO it with the Ryuma all in one combo, like the 8-cost Moria used to do with some decks. I guess you can do it if you incorporate the 4-cost Hiyori, but We're really playing so many mid cards to get some mid removal and some decent board spam. I don't know. I think the card in itself is powerful, but Perona as a leader is so far behind the times. But maybe I'll be proven wrong on this one. Minor buff for Usopp. We've got a Rebecca blocker. It is objectively better than Idio. Has 0 power, but who cares? It's top 5 search for your Corridor Coliseum. And then you can play your Corridor Coliseum. It's just a slightly better Idio. Will make Usopp a little bit more consistent. And here's a list of Usopp that I've yoinked from Nightingale TCG. And then swapped the Idios to Rebecca's, because I am very creative. There's also a couple of Croc cards in this set, which is kind of weird, because Croc came out after this in Japan. So when we saw these cards initially, we were like, what the fuck are these for? But yeah, I think both of these cards are kind of ass. I'm not going to lie. They don't really do anything for Croc that he's not already doing. Maybe the Valentine is an okay searcher, but you already have 2 searchers, and your 2Ks kind of give you a bit of cycle or draw anyway. I don't know. I'm not very impressed by either of these cards. Now we move into yellow, and before we get onto the big one, we got a minor buff for Pudding. Smoothie, it's a 2K, it can flip your life but face down. People have played Viola in the past. Having that as one of your 2Ks is probably worthwhile. It's Big Mum Pirate searchable. What's not to love? Sometimes this can help you get your ramp off easier. Next, Shirahoshi, and this is one I'm very excited to try on the channel soon. There will be a video on Shirahoshi probably within the next week, which is quite exciting. And this gives you heal, this gives you power. This is honestly an insane card. Shirahoshi's 2 drawbacks are the fact that you have to have the 2 cost on the board in many situations, and the fact that you can't attack. Not being able to attack is such a huge drawback. They have to overprint so much insane support for these non-attacking leaders, and honestly I think they need to give it up. Start printing more leaders like the Red-Blue Vivi that have effects where they don't attack, they can attack, if you get what I mean. Like if Shirahoshi's activate main was you rest 1 Don, flip the life, and then rest this leader. That way you could attack on certain turns where you don't need to summon a Sea King. Like in the early games, your early game is less shit. But then when you start summoning these crazy characters, you lose your attack. Similar to Vivi. I think if I was designing it, that would be something I would look towards, but regardless, I'm yapping about this card for way too long. Here's a list of Shirahoshi that I'm going to be starting testing with very soon. Now, the big daddy of the set, Nami. This card is the best card in the set. There is no doubt in my mind. This is the single best card in the set, and this buffs pretty much every yellow leader can look to play this card. I've not got the time to highlight every single yellow leader in the game, shockingly. So here are a few that I've picked out that can benefit from this and some of the other cards in this set in yellow. Firstly, Blue Yellow Nami. I think this is the deck that is singly most buffed by the new set. You gain this, you gain the 7-cost Robin for unconditional heal and a body that your opponent does not want to get rid of. And also you gain a Universal Searcher for 2 costs, 8 costs, which is basically the entire deck, outside of maybe some counter events and maybe 10-cost Whitebeard if you like that card. This deck is going to be so much more consistent and so much more powerful. The fact this Nami burns a life, gives you a Don, has an on-KO to maintain board presence. This does everything that pretty much every yellow deck wants to do. And in Nami, this is just going to be crazy. Nami, I don't think will be tier 1, but she's a very solid tier 2 or tier 1.5, depending on how you have your tier list deck. And here is the list that I will be starting with when I test Nami for EB03. Yellow Luffy, ST29 Luffy, also can use both the Nami and the Robin, but he can also use the 6-cost S-Snake. I'm less confident in the 6-cost S-Snake being good. I think it is better than Kuma because you can control what goes in your top life, although it must be said that you do lose the annoying on-KO that Kuma has, so the S-Snake is much easier to take out as a target. I'm not sure whether any of them actually are going to see play in the deck. Personally, I'm starting with a build a little bit like this that does not include the S-Snake, but it's a very valid card in the deck if you really want to play it. The Nami gives this deck faster burn, and the Robin gives this deck more card economy because Kuma makes you trash a card. Robin doesn't, and that's really big. Another deck that can use both the Nami and the Robin is, well, Robin. I'm quite interested to try a full Straw Hat build of Robin. Here's one that I've sort of knocked together very quickly. Not sure if this is going to be the wave, but now having Nami is a really good play, Robin is a really good play, as well as, of course, Gum Gum Giant being Straw Hat searchable. And decent other Straw Hat cards, like you've got the 4-cost Sanji from the starter deck, as well as a couple others. I think makes this deck quite interesting. The Banish is so very powerful and very dangerous, especially into potentially what looks like not a yellow meta, but yellow is certainly going to be quite represented. So I'm going to try building a Robin deck a little bit like this one. Yellow Katakuri, I just recently, very recently in fact, as of the release of this video, played Yellow Katakuri on the channel. If you want to check out how much this Robin changes that deck, check out my video. The list from the vid is on your screen now. It's a bit of a Straw Cat build, if you'll excuse the pun. Works quite well. Nami works incredibly in the deck. The rest of the Straw Hat crew they chipped in. But this burning a life and putting that on your leader so that you can use your leader effect to swing for 7 and manipulate a lot of life is really powerful for Yellow Katakuri. Blue Yellow Boa also makes brilliant use of this card. This card is so insane, man. This goes in everything. Literally every yellow deck can use this card. Pretty much. But yeah, you can also play this in Blue Yellow Boa. Not going to ramble because we've talked about this card more than enough, but again, burning your opponent's life, the on KO, where if it activates, will activate Boa's leader effect, which is kind of wild. Here's a list on your screen of Boa playing with this new 5-cost Nami. And finally, Purple Yellow Rosinante. I think there are going to be 2 schools of thought on how to build this deck going forwards. There's definitely going to be more Don Quixote Pirates focused builds of Rosie still hanging around. The 1-cost Sugar at base just searches for quite a number of targets in the deck anyway, so adding in a couple of Bullet Strings, adding in a couple of Virgos or Rosies, nothing to be scoffed at. And I think there will also be more Heart Pirate Straw Hat Crew focus lists that look to play maybe the When You're at Sea you can fight against pirates, and then the new 5-cost Nami as a way to burn your opponent's life and develop a bit of sticky board. And there's a very funny combo that if they take out that Nami, you can play 8-cost Lore off of it because it has 6,000 power, understated card. Very funny. But I think this 8-cost Lore fits into both of those builds really nicely. Gives you Rush, you get a Rush 6k swing for just 6 Dom because this doesn't actually cost 8 in this deck. Then you get a heal, then you get to play the 7-cost Lore from your hand and buff up your board, buff up your characters. You're gaming everywhere. So I think this Lore will be played in both the Don Quixote Pirates build and a more Straw Hat focused build, and there are lists for both on your screen over the last 30 seconds. Finally, everyone's favourite egghead genius, Mr. Vegapunk. Of course, you can look to include the S-Snake, although it's a little awkward to use in this deck because you have to have 2 or more life, and you can look to include the Nami, but you don't get much value out of the Don on your leader. But this Lilith is designed for Vegapunk. It's a nice trigger body, and then on play, you just get to draw 1. That's so important for Vegapunk because his gameplay was all about resources. So having this that draws a card, and then when we get EB04, getting that Borsalino that also effectively draws a card because it heals you for free, going to be very powerful and good times for Vegapunk. I'm excited to try out this Lilith, and here is a build of Vegapunk on your screen now. So thank you for watching this video. Are these lists going to be perfect? Obviously not. I don't even know how many lists are in this video. I haven't edited it yet. A crazy number. But regardless, I think this is a pretty good starting point if you're looking to build any of these decks for EB03. If you have a favourite rogue deck that you think gets buffed by a card in this set that I didn't mention, let me know all about it in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.